Thanks again, Alex, for hopping on to another episode of Untapped Stories. I know we were chatting a bit before show, and for parents and athletes who are listening, just kind of explain a bit of your background. We know you've been an AU coach for a long time, had an awesome college career, played at multiple schools, but maybe to set the stage for everyone, we'd love to kind of take it back to give them an idea of, who you are as a person and what sports were like for you growing up. So if you could start, maybe just share a bit of details about if you were always a soccer player, if you were a multi-sport athlete as a kid, and kind of how those early times in sports shaped who you became as a person and a coach.
Thanks for having me on today. A little bit of background from me. I kind of grew up in a pretty multi-sport household. My dad played college baseball. My brother played college basketball. So growing up, sports were a huge thing. My mom ran marathons. So we love the outdoors and we love sports. Growing up, I never really had a selected sport that I would play. It was pretty much what season are you in? The fall happened to be soccer for me, and then come winter time, it would normally be basketball, and come spring, I played tennis. And so I never really had a time in my life until I hit about, I would say, probably 8th or ninth grade that I kind of took my focus and made that soccer. I played basketball all through high school. I think that really impacted my success on the soccer field. There's a lot of crossover there. That was super helpful for me, and also from the mental side of preventing burnout and all of that. I think playing multiple sports kind of really helped me in that area. So yeah, for me, I think it really wasn't until, again, my 8th or ninth grade that I was this is my passion, this is my love, and I have, a lot higher goals for what I want to do and achieve in that specific sport.
When you hit that 8th grade, ninth grade level, did you have a serious sit down with your parents thinking if we really take this seriously, I can make it to the D1 level in soccer? Or was it more of just a natural progress where the other sports kind of fell off and you knew you were better at soccer?
For sure. I think for me, it was kind of a situation where I would sign up for sports, before the season started, and my parents would sit down with me before every season and they'd be like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I was really lucky that I had a support system for my parents where yes, while, my brother and my dad and even my mom who ran marathons played very high level sports, I never felt that pressure that I had to do the same. And especially with my dad, he was like, "I never want you to play a sport because you feel pressure to do so. I want you to do it for sheer love of the game." And so we would sit down before every season and it would be "Are you sure you're committed to this? You say you're going to do it. Are you going to show up every day and are you going to do it?" I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't start playing club soccer until 7th grade.
That's super late.
Before that, it was travel rec. I think I hit that 7th, 8th grade year, and that's when I was I'm committed to this and I really want it to happen. And yeah, I sat down with my parents and they're like, "All right, we're going to support and guide you." And that's when I started finding those higher caliber club teams to play for and all that. And they were obviously super committed to helping me through that process, but it was very much a situation where it was my parents are going to guide me and help me, but I'm going to do the work to find those teams, find those coaches. And that kind of transferred into the recruiting process as well, where it was we're going to be there for you, but if you truly want this, you're going to go out and kind of pursue what you need to pursue.
I want to double down on two things there. I feel the fact that you didn't start high level club until 7th, 8th grade, back when you were growing up, maybe even me, especially I know I'm a little bit older, that wasn't unheard of. But I feel nowadays for parents with kids playing competitive soccer, that sometimes they feel if they don't get on the best travel team when they're, in 2nd grade, soccer's done. And I've legit heard that from parents being they didn't make the Philly Union 2nd or 3rd team, we should probably just quit and go play basketball. I'm it's not that late. You still have so much time to develop, but I feel it's just, I don't know, it's overly competitive nowadays. And like you said, people do bloom later. Some kids wind up being better. And I mean, college athletes and clubs, sure, they look at young kids, but I'm sure you don't really get recruited until early high school. So I don't know, it's not that early to give up. And I love the aspect of also not quitting. I learned that the hard way. I actually quit my soccer team when I was in 2nd grade, and my dad made the biggest deal about it. He made me go to the coach, shake his hand, say I'm sorry for signing up, and then quitting. So it's I think as a parent, if you instill that in a kid where it's they have to be responsible for it on their own, you can't have the parent do it for you. You have to kind of
Totally.
Be your own person at a young age, and I think that develops a lot of good responsibilities in a kid.
Yeah.
But maybe switching it to, so you got through the early years, had a great high school career, then you played in college. I want to dive into your college career for a second because I know you played at multiple schools. So and that's probably before the NIL, maybe right around the NIL transfer period. But what was that like for you doing maybe the recruiting process 3 different times? And what would you say to young athletes who were thinking about going through that?
Again, I was a pretty late bloomer. I didn't start playing club soccer until I was, in 7th, 8th grade. For me, like when I went through the process, the NCAA's like communication and recruiting rules were a lot different than they are now. You could commit like your freshman year. So I would say about like 75% of my teammates who played in college probably committed their freshman year. And for me, like that was way too early. I was also trying to figure out like what I wanted to study in college. And I really didn't figure that out until probably like midway through my freshman year. And that was that I wanted to study engineering. And so just through that, it kind of weeded out a lot of programs. Like a lot of low to mid majors don't even have engineering programs. And so weeded out a lot of teams and programs. And, I also knew I wanted to play a very high caliber Division I team. The thought of me being able to like compete for a national championship was super cool. And I really wanted to put the work in to do that. And so those two things were kind of like big factors for me. And so while I was getting looks, they weren't necessarily like the looks that I wanted. And there were just things that, especially with the engineering, that I really didn't want to sacrifice. And so that kind of just made my process evolve pretty slowly. Like my recruiting process in high school was 3 years long, and it was the most grueling process I think I've ever been through. It's just a roller coaster of emotions. There's times when like I would go to a showcase and there'd be tons of coaches there, and I'd get so many looks like in the span of a weekend. I'd have calls and emails and things like that, and then there'd just be like a ghost period, and you're like, where did they all go? Like, and it's so stressful because you're like, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Like, why didn't they ask me to come on a visit?
Yeah.
Then you go on the visit and you didn't get offered, and you're like, why didn't I get offered? Like, it's just this constant kind of like mental torture. But at the end of the day, I like looking back on it, it's a great process because like you are trying to find the perfect fit for you, but it's just as much on the other end, like they're trying to find a perfect fit for their program. And so I think that's something that I realized, like it's just as much a recruiting process for you as it is for them. There's certain things like as an athlete, I don't think you should compromise to like fit into the box of like X program, And so for me, again, in high school, the process was really long. It was just kind of really difficult. Like I think you mentioned, Jean, the whole fact of like soccer is a very saturated and competitive sport. And so, it just takes a long time to find your fit. So for me, like I didn't commit until February of my senior year, which like is insane. But that, that's just the process that played out for me. Yeah, for sure. I got to the point where like I just wasn't, I guess, satisfied with the offers I was getting. And so I turned down those that I had, and I just applied. I applied to 17 schools, and my hope there was that one of those schools, I would get some academic scholarship and just like walk on to a program. I was in that process of, I'm applying like any other student is going to apply. And in comes Kentucky, like out of nowhere, late February of my senior year, and I got recruited, and it ended up being like a perfect fit. And I think, again, like while it didn't last like the full 4, I think it was like the perfect program for me to start my career. Obviously, like in the SEC, I got solid playing time like my freshman, sophomore year. So I was able to get a lot of experience under my belt. COVID hit me like my freshman year, spring of my freshman year. That definitely hindered the experience. So our sophomore year, we still had it, but like it, I guess, didn't count in a way. So yeah, that ended up just like not working out. That was kind of like coaching personnel issue there. And then after my sophomore year, I went on the transfer portal, looking for, a better fit, you could say. It was a lot easier for me to get recruited like on the transfer portal than it was in high school.
Because you have the experience, like, I'm sure they want.
I had the experience. I had playing time under my belt. That's one thing that like really helped me. So like I had film and things like that. Film showing that like I can play at like the high D1 level. Like I think when you are in high school, there's a lot of stock put on like the league that you play in. So for example, like I was in USYS. I don't even know if that still exists anymore, but like it didn't pool like high level D1 coaches like ECNL and like Academy did. So that was like a struggle in and of itself. Like, hey, here's my film, but they're like, they take it with a grain of salt because they're like, you're not playing against what we consider to be like the best soccer players in the country.
Interesting.
Here, I'm playing it in the SEC. You're playing against like, top 10, top 20 teams you're showing your film and you're like, okay, like she can hang, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
And so that transfer process was a lot smoother for me, but like I think in a way I'd been jaded. Like, I'd been told things from coaches that didn't actually happen, and so like I had no trust, and I also questioned like my decision making, right? Like you go and you make your decision to go to a college, you're not thinking about leaving,
Yeah.
right? Like so that was really tough for me, where I was like, am I quitting? Like, is this quitting? Like, should I continue on? But it was just like a miserable journey for me. I'm like, this is not how college and like college sports should be. Like, I think there's a difference between like grinding and working hard and like it seriously like affecting you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I knew like the change was needed for me. But yeah, I think there were things with that second recruiting process that like I didn't trust myself necessarily, and I also started to like get jaded by the recruiting process in general and like college coaches, you know what I mean? So for me, like same mission there. I really wanted to continue playing like high level soccer. I didn't want to like move to like a mid-major per se, because I was like, I showed myself that even as a freshman, sophomore, like I could play at the highest level. So I ended up getting like great opportunity to play for TCU. At the time, they had ended up making it to, I think, the Elite
Oh
Eight
wow.
at that time. And so I was like, this is amazing. Like I'm playing for a top 10 program. Like what a gift. But it was, obviously competitive as anything, super, super competitive program. But like, that's what I'd always wanted. And so, yeah, that recruiting process was much shorter because you have a timeline on that.
Yeah, you gotta leave.
But, definitely same conversations, just you're a little bit wiser, I graduated from TCU. I had 2 years left because I had a redshirt year and the COVID year. And so I thought to myself, okay, like I've got 2 years left, might as well go get a master's and like finish kind of what I started. And so enter a 6-year college soccer journey. I don't regret it though. It was a long 6 years, but it was a great 6 years. And I think at that time, like my goals were just a little bit different. Like I had played at the highest level, and that was awesome, great experience. I think like my technical skills had improved like astronomically. I'll preface with saying like I never started at TCU, like I didn't get a ton of playing time, but I think like just even being in that environment really, really helped develop skills that I needed to take to like another program. And so in that third recruiting process, for me, it was just like, I want to make a big impact on a program. And like what that looks like is not so black and white. Like before it was like, I'm playing for a Power 5 and I'm getting my engineering degree. And I really wasn't entertaining anything outside of like a Power 5 conference. My third recruiting process was much different, and I was like, I just want to make a big impact on like a program and basically like implement and utilize everything I've learned the past 4 years. Because how rare is it that you're getting somebody who's gotten 4 years under their belt and has 2 more,
Yeah. Extremely
and
rare.
so
Never happened before COVID.
and especially because like it was never because of an injury. So like I fully played 6 seasons of college soccer. It wasn't a situation where like I had an injury, or like with COVID we still had our season.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one was much different, and I was a lot more, I guess you could say, wise again. I think before I was afraid to ask questions. I was afraid to ask the hard questions, and I think in a way it was because I lacked the confidence of like, am I ready to handle like potential answers? Like a coach could tell me I'm not good enough. Like I could ask those questions and they could be like, we don't necessarily like see it or know if you have potential to be, like a major impact in our program. And this time around, I was, asking all those questions, and they can be uncomfortable. And sometimes, like I've had this long conversation with my coach the third time around that I ended up going to. And, she's not necessarily telling me the things that I wanted to hear. And she's like, I'm not just going to tell you what you want to hear. You have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and see if like this is still the program that you want to join. And that I so appreciated, because I'd obviously been on teams or programs that they tell me, you're going to get X amount of playing time and we can promise you XYZ, and then you get there and it doesn't happen and you're like, you lied to me.
Yeah.
My third coach wasn't like that at all. It was like, you earn what you get, and like, this is how it's going to be. And if you don't like it, then this probably isn't the program for you. And so that transparency and like those really honest conversations, sadly took me 3 times to actually understand the process and not be afraid of those long conversations, but got me to the right place, and like had a amazing last 2 years of my career. So yeah, just in general, it's a grueling process. It takes a lot of patience, honestly, like a roller coaster of emotions. But I think through that, like, you're learning a lot about yourself. You're learning how to deal with criticism. Like, there's been times when I've been like ghosted by coaches. Like, you learn how to deal with that kind of stuff, but it also teaches you sort of like fight for what you want, persevere, how to be proactive. There's a lot of things that, I mean, I spent hours in high school, like, going to the school directories trying to find coaches' emails to, like, email them my schedule, or, like, game schedules and stuff, like, hours upon hours, like, trying to track down phone numbers to call coaches. And, like, all of those things were ways that I tested how much I loved it and how much I wanted it. Honestly, you could consider the recruiting process the easiest part of, playing the sport, because you get there and then it's really a job, and you're on a mission to play. It's just the recruiting process is honestly like a good test to see if this is what you want. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that, like, you should never compromise what you want and sort of what you see that you can provide just to fit a box of whatever program it is that you think you might want to go to.
That's super powerful. I think I knew your story. I didn't know the ins and outs, obviously. I think the biggest thing I took away from that a lot of young athletes probably don't know, is that the whole process, and it can be treated like this, and it sounds like you did it masterfully. It's like, it can be stepping stones, right? Like, you don't have to wake up as an ninth grader, get your perfect scholarship, you live your dream life for 4 years, then you graduate and life's good. Like, it's going to be a grind. You're going to have to go through sort of like a sales process with a college coach.
Yeah.
Like, it's really what it is, because for them it's a job, right? Like, it's not
Totally.
just a volunteer, club thing where they're coaching their kids. Like, they're providing for their family off this. So you got to expect there's going to be some back and forth. But I love the fact that you didn't give up. You maybe we'll use this nugget. You applied to 17 schools and then kind of like made yourself get recruited by the one you want. Like, that's such a different take. I feel like people at that point would just be like, well, I didn't get, my perfect school. Maybe I'll apply, and if I can walk on, great. But if not, I'm not going to worry about it. But you took like the proactive approach. So if you have the talent, a lot of kids get overlooked. You just can't give up on that. I think you have to keep going and push through. And I think your journey is a perfect example of that, and how it's not just a one shot, especially nowadays with NIL. I know things are different, but parents and kids are
Totally.
living through that. Like, it's so, not that you want to transfer, like you said, but it's so easy to transfer. I know even my wife, quick tidbit, she played at Temple and she didn't love it. Wound up staying all 4 years, but I bet if she was either in your shoes, she's a little bit older, or especially now with NIL, like, leaving and finding a new school is, it's so easy. So, again, like, stick it out, give it a shot. But if it's not for you, you can make a pivot, and sometimes, like it did for you, it works out for the best in the end. So after all that, I know you kind of you kind of recently graduated somewhat, but you're working now and you've given back through coaching. So maybe flipping into coaching, what made you throughout your years in college, and even after too, as you graduate and kind of think about life beyond, what's made you want to stick with soccer and give back through coaching to young kids?
For me, it's kind of just a great chance to stay connected with the game that I love. You also are able to work with talented athletes who are trying to develop like skills that, I've hopefully already developed. They're trying to gain confidence, learn habits, and learn how to be disciplined. And so I think it's been super rewarding for me just to see how, like, there's been shifts in mindsets and habits that are kind of translating into like bigger growth on the field. And so when you're with these athletes, there's some who, when I first started, I would say it was about 2 years ago at this point, I saw them all the way through till I had to move. But just seeing their growth and seeing how, maybe at first they were a little hesitant. You can't really tell if they love soccer or not. They're kind of just there because their parents signed them up to have a private session. And just over the weeks and kind of years at that point, you see like their true love of the game and their passion comes out to the point where, like, I'd have some people at first, they're just like there kind of going through the motions, and within a few training sessions, they're like coming out, giving me a play-by-play of their game on, the past weekend, and they're showing me like the moves that we had gone over and how they scored a goal on it or something like that. And like for me, that's the most rewarding part, where it's like I have so much love for the game. To see that in younger players is super encouraging. And you're really seeing them kind of take their sort of career, even if it's, small and they're super young and they're just trying to kind of formulate it into their own thing. And it's not just something that like, their parents are telling them to do. It's truly like a passion that they have. That's been really cool for me to sort of witness.
I don't know, you've coached a lot of kids and parents always give you great reviews. What's been maybe one particular story where an athlete kind of came to you, like you said, maybe they were shy, but then you've seen them really develop over the last 2 years? And what, in that process, what changed and how did you bring it out of them as a coach? Whether it was a physical tool that they didn't know they had and you kind of unlocked it, or if it was a mental flip where someone was maybe too hesitant, a little bit nervous to play strong, but you brought out the best in them.
I would say so. One of my first clients that I started with was about like 9 to 10 years old. Showed up for the first few sessions, like, again, kind of felt like she was like forced to come. She didn't really want to be there. And I honestly think it was because she was like frustrated with her skills. Like, I think she really enjoyed soccer. It was just like she got very frustrated with her touch and her ability to control the ball.
Okay.
And so I think with that, it's like, yeah, when you're not good at something, you're not going to enjoy doing it, And so I could kind of tell from the start, she was sort of just like lacking technique. And so for the first few weeks, like we just worked on technique, which is not fun at all. So I was like, I'm either going to lose her or like she's going to really like, start to see her progress. But through working techniques, like it's breaking down your bad habits and really just learning, like how to strike a ball, how to, what your first touch should look like and all that. And within just a few weeks, she started showing up with like a true pep in her step. And you could really see like her confidence shift. And I think the biggest thing was like just passion for the game began to evolve. And so she was an athlete that I had the pleasure of coaching. Like, I think she might have been like my first athlete. And I ended up coaching her all the way through until I had to move up to Boston. And
that's awesome.
Within the course of those 2 years, she moved up from like the B team to her like pre-ECNL team. She became like one of the leading scorers on her team. And it's not all like results driven. It was really just like she would show up to our sessions again, like wanting to tell me like all the things she did that weekend in her game that like had transferred over from our session. She would come to our sessions like with a move that she had learned. So clearly she's like doing work outside of our sessions. And then, what really got me was she would ask me to run certain drills or work on certain things. And like that was the biggest indicator that like she wants to take this and sort of like make it her own. Like you're not doing drills and working on things because like your parents are telling you or I'm telling you. It's like, no, I realize like this is one of my sort of limitations on the field and like I know I need to work on it, so like will you help me? And so taking that development into your own hands is super encouraging to see, especially like as a youth player.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think that makes my job easy, and it's also super rewarding to see just that love of the game, because I think at the end of the day that's what's going to sustain you is like that true passion. Because if you think about it, like you said earlier, nowadays people are you'll have kids that are 8 years old and they're trying to have a sustaining career that's going to last them till they're 22 in college. So like if you don't have love for the game, it's just not going to happen. And so for me, being able to see that like concretely is super cool just from a coach's perspective.
Actually, I want to ask a question on that, but I brought that up to a high-level golf coach the other day, and I asked him how has he kept his passion for the game, because golf, tennis, individual sports, so easy to get burnt out. And he had a funny tidbit.
Totally.
He said he grew up in Canada and he could only golf outside for 4 months out of the year. So he's like, any chance I got to golf, I loved it. I never really got the chance to burn out, but I know it's different in the U.S., especially for soccer. Like most kids, unless you're maybe in Maine where there's snow 6 years out of the month, like you can probably train and play all year round. How do you help young athletes, and maybe even the athletes you trained, but also just like people that in your network, maybe that were good athletes and probably were on par with you at some point, but eventually they fell off, burnout, either didn't make it to college because they didn't want to, or they didn't kind of see it all the way through. How do you avoid burnout nowadays when the option to train and play all year round is just so present for young athletes?
So for me, I guess this goes against, the grain now, but I'm a firm believer in playing multi-sports. I remember like in high school was a time of like academy and you couldn't play other sports. And so there were some people that like would play academy soccer, and that was it. And I was like, I can't imagine doing that. Because for me, so I played basketball, I think I mentioned this, like throughout high school, and that prevented burnout for me. Because it gave me a break from like the soccer field and like touching a soccer ball, but it still helped me develop skills that transfer to the field.
Yep.
So like, think about like 1v1 defending and sliding your feet in basketball, boxing out, like rebounding, all those things transferred over to the soccer field that like I think even made me better. And I'm working on them every day without having to touch a soccer ball and be on the field. And so when the time came for me to have my soccer tournaments or showcases or whatnot, like there was a season that I felt super refreshed. And basketball came at a perfect time because it's in the winter. So
Yep.
you have your, fall soccer season and you finish your fall soccer season like dead. I always got to the point like I'm putting my heart and soul into my fall season, and you reach, I want to say like November time, and I'm like, I cannot touch a soccer ball or even think about it. Like I'm drained and I'm mentally exhausted. And then I got to play basketball. And then, you're reaching, I would say probably February, March, and I'm like super refreshed and I can't wait to get back on the field. And it was kind of just like that evolution of just having a perfect break. I think where I started to struggle was like between the spring and fall seasons.
Okay.
You have summer, obviously, but you're starting to grind in the summertime for your fall season. That was like, our main season.
Yeah.
Then you go to college, it's soccer all the time. But I think at that point, like your passion's there and you want it and you have goals, and they do a good job of, when fall season's over, because that's your main season, you do get a break. You're more in the gym lifting and doing things like that, and doing fitness and whatnot than being on the ball. So it is a good balance. You have summer break, which like first week or two, you're like, take a break, like do not work out, period. And then you start the grind back up. So I think, honestly, like for me, I didn't necessarily feel burnout in college. It was truly like I would start to feel it when I'm going through the recruiting process in high school. It's such a roller coaster of emotions, like mental toll on you. And on top of that, you're trying to play that same sport. Like you're frustrated from a recruiting standpoint. You're like, why am I even doing this? And then you have to play that sport day in and day out
Yep.
without a break. To me, like that was not sustainable. That's where basketball came in. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of multi-sports, but I think in general, it's just like finding other passions, being able to like step away from the field, from soccer, putting your heart into something else, like healthy, doing it healthy and responsibly, of course, but like finding what kind of makes you tick, and that doesn't always have to be soccer, so that when you come back to it, your body and mind is refreshed.
Maybe quick kind of side question for athletes who want to do that, know the benefits, but like soccer's, they know they want to play high level. Do you touch a soccer ball at all from November to March, or do you go cold turkey and just focus on hoops, focus on school, and then come March, you're like, okay, great, I can get back to training?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I would play basketball, and it was for my high school team. It's wasn't like AAU or anything like that. And so that was like every day after school.
Okay.
And I would still like lift 2 times a week. Me and some of my teammates would like go. I still had club soccer, but club soccer was like 2 times a week, I think.
Got
So
it.
I would have practice 2 times a week. There would be showcases and stuff. So like I'm still playing soccer.
Got it.
I'm just not putting like my heart and soul into like in the fall season, you're playing every single day. You're training outside of your normal trainings. Like you're putting probably 20 plus hours a week in soccer. I would say in the wintertime, it was more like 8 to 10.
Okay. Still significant.
And then, yeah. And then you would have, I think I do vividly remember, like around Thanksgiving time, we would have like a Disney showcase or whatnot. So you're still doing all those showcases and things like that. I think for me, it was more just maybe not even tapering off the soccer necessarily. It was like, let me add in another passion that just gets my mind away from it.
Yeah.
The expectation is like soccer all the time. But yeah, I think just finding a different passion and a way that you can, like, again, for basketball, there's a ton of crossover. You can still work on skills
Yeah.
without necessarily touching a ball.
And I guess it depends on like your, maybe your high school basketball or winter season program too. But if the coach is okay with it, if they know you're a star soccer player, but I'm imagining a lot of soccer players can probably help in basketball defense. Like I'm sure you're a shutdown defender, so they like having you. You're athletic. They know you're not going to go play college hoops though, so maybe they're okay with you focusing on soccer, but being a good addition to the basketball team. So I like that because I like you said, I think a lot of high level soccer players would be like, sure, that sounds great, Alex, but like I can't give up soccer. So you're not giving it up. You're just kind of adding in a nice basketball season while keeping soccer on the side, but still doing it and staying sharp for that spring season, which is really smart. What about maybe taking it back to the young kids? One of my last questions. You've trained a lot of kids and you've obviously played for a long time too. What do you think's a mindset early on that separates as they get older, good and solid players from really great players with potential to be excellent?
I think especially early on, like focusing on more like soft skill stuff, like I think the discipline and consistency in the way that they approach the game is like a huge separator of good from great. I think especially when you're young, like talent's going to take you very far. But I think the players who stand out are the ones who, show up every day with the same focus. I think especially in, like youth and high school, there's a lot of distractions. And so I think the players that separate themselves are the ones that, stay disciplined and consistent with their habits, attention to detail, I guess, and doing the small things right day after day. That's not only going to build like the players' confidence, but it's also going to build trust from coaches and teammates and whatnot. And I think that will translate over time in just helping them in the future, especially if they choose to play college ball.
I agree. I mean, at that point, 9, 10, 11-year-old, and I'm sure you do, like you have to teach the hard skills to help them improve. But if you can instill the right level of discipline, responsibility, and mindset with that kid, that's going to carry them for life, whether they play college soccer or not. Like, I think honestly, that's why I've seen so many parents sign up for lessons, because they want to have them train with a mentor and a coach who's been there, done that, and can teach them, what it's like to be a not a professional, but like to take your craft seriously and to learn. So, last question, Alex, that I can think about, unless anything else comes up. But if you could, and I love asking this one, if you can go back, put yourself in the shoes of, and I like to pick the pinpoint time based on kind of your story, maybe like that 7th, 8th grade Alex who's still playing multiple sports, loving life, but soccer is going to start to get more seriously. It's more serious. If you can go back in time, then what would you tell yourself, having been through the entire recruiting process, transfer portal, and now, graduating and being an adult in Boston? Like, what piece of advice would you give to yourself as a younger athlete, having been through everything you went through?
Don't sweat the small stuff and like focus on just like passion of the game. For me, like especially during high school, like I was so jaded by the recruiting process that like it felt like such a job and such a task that like there'd be times where I'm like, do I even like soccer anymore? Like it wasn't fun. There was just so much pressure and to like make a decision that I started to lose like love for the game. Or I would go to showcases and I'd just be looking at like which coaches are there versus like did we win?
Yeah.
Like did I have fun? And I think there's a time and place when like sort of soccer or the sport becomes a job. And I think like you said, in college, like people's lives kind of depend on it, right? Like coaches are trying to provide for their families, and there's obviously money involved in all that, and like from an athlete's standpoint, scholarships and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it is important and it is a job to be committed, but I think as a youth player, it's like have fun. That's the time for it. I guess in a way, like it's not that deep. Like how you perform on one day or in one play is not gonna define you. And it sure felt like that at the time. But looking back, it's like those were the days. Like when you're just playing for fun, and you're with your teammates who you love. So I guess just like being in the moment there and truly just recognizing like your love for the game and just having fun.
Maybe, and I didn't think to ask this, but now that it came up, because I've seen that happen so many times. I can remember from high school AAU, even when we were younger, where I grew up in the Philadelphia area, high schools would recruit middle schoolers to go to private schools and stuff. And I saw so many kids, understandably, not be able to handle that. Like they would see their favorite high school coach show up to a game and they would play terribly. They would take like 20 shots they shouldn't have taken. How do you, and I know it's so hard as a young kid, but what would you tell a parent, maybe a better way to frame it? Like what's one tip or one pregame prep or in-game kind of like mental change that an athlete can make to just focus on the game and not worry about who's in the stands or who's watching them?
I think it's super important from like a parent's perspective. Like your child probably already knows that there's like those external pressures that coaches will be there. Like You don't need to remind
Yeah.
them. I used to have a lot of teammates whose parents would be like, like Florida's going to be there and West Virginia's going to be at your game. And they're like, I know, like, I'm so stressed. Like, you don't
Yeah.
need to, like, it's kind of like adding fuel to the
Yeah.
fire. I think in that case, like, your child likely is going to feel the nerves and like feel stressed and like feel the pressure. And if the parent is doing the same and outwardly showing that anxiety, like it's not going to be beneficial for the athlete. So I think like the parent, it's their job is to kind of center the kid, and just remind them, like, put some perspective on it and remind them like the true importance of the game is not, to satisfy somebody else. It's to have fun and to enjoy the game of soccer. All those external pressures, you can kind of control how you react to those. A lot of the times when I was young, it was like, do they think I'm good enough? Like, I was so worried about like what coaches thought of me that like it literally consumed me. And so yeah, I would see coaches on the sideline and be like, oh my gosh, like I just gave the ball away. Like, and I'm thinking about what the coach thinks of that,
Yeah.
not like the fact that I just gave the ball away. So I think from a parent's perspective, it's kind of shifting the perspective of like, that's just another human being. They have a logo on their shirt, but they're just another human being. Like, you don't need to be so focused on sort of satisfying their opinion of you. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would say for me and probably for my teammates, it's like when you see your parents are anxious and like stressed about like coaches being there, it's not beneficial for the athlete and probably makes them more stressed. So
100%.
them sort of being zen, and trying to just center the athlete, I think would be very helpful.
I remember my dad played college football. Before every game I ever played, we'd leave the car and he would say, just have fun. And it sounded so cheesy as a kid, but then as I got older, I realized the message he was sending, because and like, it's hard to
Totally.
do, but if your parents support you, we've seen it all the time. Like, the only thing you can control as a parent and athlete is what you're doing with your kid. Like, if the kid does get nervous for a college coach, that's normal. But if the parent doubles down, it will not be
Totally.
good. So you kind of have to take that
Yep.
perspective and be fine with it. And I will say one tip for parents too. Shout out to Melissa, who was on a couple days ago. But parent mentioned that she used to get so anxious for games and that she would kind of put that stress on her kids. And one tip she did, and I thought it was funny, but instead of like yelling and screaming during the game, every time she felt that rush, she would just grab her like $1,000 camera and stick it in front of her face and take photos. And she's like, I can't yell from behind a camera. I got to focus on taking the actual photos. So for parents, like, and I'm sure a lot of parents
Very
do
cool.
actually take videos and photos of their kids for recruiting. So if you're stuck in that spot as a parent and you don't really know how to handle it and it's tough for you, grab a camera, grab a video recorder, and just like, be a resource for your kid and maybe put up some highlights on Instagram so college coaches can see them. Well, cool. Honestly, Alex, this was so much fun. Appreciate you hopping on and sharing your like, really unique
Of course.
story. We've heard a lot of like, I got recruited and I played 4 years, but you're you're winding through the college
Yeah.
athletics
Yeah,
life.
roller coaster for sure.
Honestly, even back to being 15. So it was cool. We appreciate it. And yeah,
Of course.
you've been an awesome media coach for a while. So thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.